Hey, what's up, guys? I'm here to talk about Season 3 of Star Wars Rebels, so let's get to it right away. Alright, right off the back, Season 3 starts out okay, it starts out decent, nowhere near as explosive as, let's say, Season 2 with Darth Vader hunting Ezra, you know what I'm saying, Kanan and Ahsoka. But, for the most part, it was okay. The most interesting aspect of this opening arc was the Bendu and his instruction to Kanan, who was kind of, withdrawn from Ezra and the other rebels because of him going blind. And simultaneously, Ezra is tampering, or let's just say he's playing around with the properties of the dark side ever since he secretly took the Sith holocron and hid it from his master Kanan. So he's hiding the Sith holocron from Kanan, and he's using dark side tactics to get some of the missions done on behalf of the rebels. And Ezra, I never been a big fan of Ezra, and I'm still not. He was a lot better in Season 2, but in Season 3 he's still kind of getting to me a little bit. He was very irritating in Season 1 to me. And in this beginning story arc involving the Bendu and everything, he's just kind of a smartass, and for all the whining and bitching and moaning about Anakin kind of being like a whiny little punk, quote unquote, and the prequels, I mean, Ezra is just to the 10th power, just so much more irritating to me. And he's kind of like that. He exemplifies a bad attitude, and I think they just kind of push it a little bit too much, that for me it makes the character unlikable. And for me, it kind of just like, what about him, what attributes of him as a character can even make him, or can you even say that this guy has good Jedi potential? I mean, but other than that, I thought the episode was pretty decent. I really liked the notion of Bendu. He's almost like another Force wielder, similar to the 3 Force wielders in the Mortis trilogy from Star Wars Clone Wars. And I think, what he's trying to teach Kanan, to let go of his fear, and to see beyond his eyes, to see beyond, to see with his third eye, to see what's really there, and to see beyond his fear. That was nice. And it was also nice to see him come to terms with Ezra, and for Ezra to accept that it wasn't his fault that Kanan became blind. That was nice, despite Ezra acting like an idiot for the most part, and obviously, Kanan finds out about the Sith holocron that Ezra was hiding from him, and he confiscates it and he gives it to the Bendu, for safekeeping. Now, last but not least, another great thing about this little story arc was the introduction of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now, initially, I was kind of mixed and kind of indifferent to the portrayal of Thrawn, at least in this episode. Because I didn't imagine him to be so soft-spoken. He's very soft-spoken. His voice acting is very, very, very soft-spoken. And it was kind of difficult for me to get used to that, because in my mind, when I read the Thrawn trilogy, it was just completely different kind of delivery as far as how he spoke. But as the show progressed, he definitely wins me over. But we'll get to that later. And in addition, another thing that I liked about this beginning 2-part story arc was the introduction of Price. She totally reminds me of Daala. I think that's her name, spelled Daala, from the New Jedi Order. I mean, not the New Jedi Order, from the Jedi Academy trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson. She was like the main villain. And Price totally reminds me of her. Like, when I imagine Daala, I saw what Price is, and I really, 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 really enjoy this character. And I also enjoyed the voice actress. I don't know her name off the top of my head, but I definitely recognize that voice from the classic Ghost in the Shell standalone complex series. And it's great to hear that voice again. Now, moving on, The third episode in season 3, we're back with Darth Maul, and Darth Maul takes some folks hostage, namely the rebel crew. He takes them hostage because he wants the Sith holocron. So therefore, Ezra and Kanan have to go to the Bendu in order to get the Sith holocron that Kanan gave to the Bendu for safekeeping. And again, Ezra still continues to exemplify the attributes of a asshole. You know, I really not liking him, really not feeling him in the beginning of this season. But everything else is nice. It's always great to see Darth Maul up to no good and up to his schemes. And basically, there's a vision that he has, and it indicates symbolism of the twin sons, Obi-Wan and everything. And, you know, and there's also kind of I guess you want to say a tribute to Blind Fury, the movie Blind Fury, or I guess you want to say Satachi, the blind swordsman, you know, with the way that Kanan is able to hold his own, even though that he's blind. I love that. That's totally a tribute and a shout out to the old samurai films, and I really enjoyed that. Now, the next following episode, which involves Wedge Antilles as a young man, I really hated this episode. I couldn't stand it. Totally not what I wanted. I did not want an interpretation of Wedge Antilles in this way. It's total kiddie, childish, little kid shit. And, like, you know, when they announced, before the show was actually released, when they announced that they were going to make a Star Wars Rebels show, I didn't think they were going to introduce all these new characters like the Ghost Crew and whatnot. I thought we were going to see, you know, Wedge Antilles and Darklighter and Mon Mothma. I thought those would be the main characters, and they went a different route, which took some time for me to adjust to. But, you know, we got to see Princess Leia, and she was great in season 2, and we got to see Mon Mothma a little bit, and we get to see her in this later episodes in season 3, and I thought she was great. But man, Wedge Antilles, dude, oh my god, what a disgrace. What a disgrace, man. I can't even watch this episode. Like, I just thought it was stupid. I didn't like it at all. I totally did not want to see Wedge Antilles that way. You know, now moving on, we get to Hera's Heroes, where she visits Ryloth again, you know, and she becomes reunited with her father, Cham Syndulla, and Hera fakes being a prisoner, and there's a great scene here involving Admiral Thrawn, man, and it just, when I saw this little scene, it won me over, and all my kind of indifference to the initial introduction of his character. And it was totally inspired from the Thrawn trilogy. And it's when he's talking about the art that the people from Ryloth, the Twi'leks, have. And I think Hera, or something that she was trying to steal, like I guess you want to call it like a talisman or something like that, almost like a doll, and she gets caught, and Admiral Thrawn confiscates it, and his little, like, I guess you want to, his little underling, or his the soldier that's with him, you know, he just has complete and utter disdain for the Twi'leks and the Ryloth and the people from Ryloth, and he's just like totally demeaning the art. And there's a scene where, like, Thrawn, he's trying to be calm and collective. And then he hears that soldier, you know, speak, you know, negatively about the art. And in a flash of hatred, he just grabs him by the throat. And he just, like, turns into, like, a vicious animal for, like, a split second. And then he reels himself back into being composed and being calm and collective, you know. And he's just like, oh, forgive me, you know, I forget that, you know, not everybody has such appreciation for art like I do. And I thought that was such a brilliant scene. Like, that was amazing. That right there, you know, that was outstanding. That was worth the price of admission alone, just to see that. I love that. And it was a family heirloom, you know, and basically, you know, I thought this was a great episode, and it seems that the rebels get away unscathed, but Thrawn is totally playing. He's totally playing everybody. You know, if he lets somebody, if somebody escapes, it's because Admiral Thrawn has it integrated into his plan. It's all part of the plan. Like people, you know, his soldiers, his fellow stormtroopers, and the other people from the Empire, they're like, "Oh, he got away! Oh no!" But Thrawn is like, it's part of the plan. Because we can get this little band of rebels, but I want to weed out the entire squadron. I want to weed out the entire faction of rebels, not just 5 little measly rebels on a mission. I want to destroy them all. You know, so it totally is great foreshadowing of what's going to happen possibly later in the season or in the show. Now, moving on, the next episode is we're coming back and getting to be reintroduced to Hondo, a character that was beloved from the Clone Wars. Now, unfortunately, I thought this episode was silly, cartoonish nonsense. I didn't like it at all. I liked Hondo very much in the Clone Wars, but for some reason in Star Wars Rebels, he just seems to be, you know, just some guy throwing out a bunch of jokes, and I don't know, this episode felt like filler. It wasn't really interesting to me. I didn't like it. Now, following the next episode called An Inside Man, the rebels return to Lothal and they meet up with a Ryder, and they're asked to take out an Imperial factory. And Thrawn comes down to investigate the workers of the Imperial factory because he suspects that there's rebel saboteurs on the loose. And he forces the workers to die by forcing them to test their own work. And when he forces some of them to test their own work, you know, things explode, you know, because of sabotage. So he's weeding out the traitors. And this is very, very, very interesting. And again, Thrawn is appraising art. Thrawn is using his whole, the whole capacity of his intelligence in order to capture the rebels, which is classic Thrawn. And a great, great translation from the book onto the small screen. Very well done. And in this episode, we also find out that Kallus is the new Fulcrum. So Kallus is a traitor to the Empire, and he's sympathetic to the rebellion, which is interesting. And I like that, and that kind of ties in to an episode in season 2 where him and Zeb have to survive together because they're stranded in the winter cold, and Kallus begins to empathize for the cause that the rebels have. You know, so this is a very interesting plot development, and I really liked it. And the way the rebels escape is Ezra and Kanan take over a walker, which was very cool. I liked it. We had some nice little camaraderie moments there. And this episode ends with, again, Thrawn being the mastermind that he is. He knows that there is a traitor, and he's using the appearance of the Empire's failures in order to weed out, you know, the main squadron, the main faction of rebels. So what he wants is to find out who the traitor is and use the traitor to find out all the rebels so he could destroy them all at once. You know, and it's classic Thrawn, and it's great. Now, the following episode, known as Visions, Ezra is hearing voices, and he's having visions of Darth Maul, you know, and it's really getting to him, and he almost murders innocent people because, you know, he thought that these people were Darth Maul, you know. So in order to find help, he consults the Bendu, in which Maul arrives, and they both go on a mission together to Dathomir, which was great. It was great to go to Dathomir again. It totally reminded me of the Clone Wars. And it was great to see Dathomir again. And in order to see the vision, because Ezra wants to find out how to destroy the Sith. So that's the only reason why he's teaming up with Darth Maul in this little instant. and Darth Maul has his own personal vendetta, which is to find revenge against Obi-Wan. So it's almost like, but he doesn't say that to Ezra, but they're both using each other in order to get what they want, in essence. So therefore they go to Dathomir, and they have to take almost like these shamanistic drugs, from the witches of Dathomir, in order to see the vision. And in the vision, Kenobi is seen. And again, Darth Maul wants revenge. And he sees Kenobi, and he just, and he almost immediately takes off in order to quench his thirst for revenge. And simultaneously, Ezra has a vision of the twin suns. Something that was ambiguous. But at the same time, this twin suns vision ties in with the destruction of the Sith, which I like. And I also like this because it's reminiscent to George Lucas's original drafts of Star Wars, where there was a prophecy, and I think it was a child of the twin sons was going to, fulfill some kind of prophecy, and that kind of reminded me of that. And another interesting that happens in this episode is that the spirit of the fallen witches, which were slaughtered by the Separatists and Darth Grievous and the Clone Wars, they come back and they possess Kanan and Sabine, and they have Ezra has to be resourceful in order how to defeat them, and think in order to defeat them, they couldn't pass a certain mark, in regards to the Dathomirian temple or wherever it was that they were. And he uses that to his advantage in order to defeat them, and also to be able to defeat them without killing Sabine and Kanan. And lastly, it was great to see the Darksaber again, which is given to Sabine, because she's a Mandalorian, so it's only right that she be the one to hold on to that. And again, I love it. I love the paying of tribute to the Clone Wars, in this episode. And this was an all-around great episode. Now, moving on, we have a 2-part story arc involving Saw Gerrera, who was in Clone Wars. And if you remember, his sister was killed in the war against the Separatists. And Saw Gerrera was also in Rogue One, played by Forrest Whitaker. And it's great that Forrest Whitaker is voicing him in this show. I love it when they bring in the actual actors, kind of like they did with Liam Neeson and Qui-Gon Jinn in the Clone Wars. I really like that. It helps with the continuity, and it helps sell the show as truly, genuinely being part of the bigger universe that we have going on here. Now, the Rebels go to Geonosis, and the Rebel retcon team is missing. And so are the Geonosians. All those little termite aliens, they've all gone missing. And also has the Rebel reconnaissance team gone missing. And the Rebels, or the Ghost Crew, what have you not, they're rescued by Saw Gerrera. And Saw Gerrera, he's not all there. I think war has really messed with his mind. It's messed with his trust. He has trust issues. It's messed with his bloodlust. And frankly, he's a little crazy. And this was alluded to in Rogue One. And they discover a shield generator with an unknown operator, and they find a young Geonosian was actually controlling these old Separatist droids, and they were attacking the Ghost Crew. And, right away, Saw Gerrera suspects this young Geonosian termite dude to be a scumbag, and he's treating him pretty badly. But in the end, it finds out that the reason why this young Geonosian was being, programming the droids to attack was because he was protecting the last egg of his people. So the Geonosians are on the brink of extinction, and this young Geonosian was just trying to save his race from extinction. And Saw Gerrera kind of deals with this. He's untrusting, and it's something that he has to come to terms with. But in the end, he's able to compromise, and not fully turn into I guess you want to say a war criminal. Now, moving on, we have a new Mandalorian episode or story arc called Legacy in Mandalore, and I cannot praise this little story arc, these 2 episodes, enough. This was outstanding. This is a perfect example of a story arc for a strong woman, coming of age. This is what the sequel trilogy by Disney has completely and utterly failed at. Now, if those idiots making that trilogy sat down for 40 minutes and watched this 2-part story arc, they will see a great example of a strong female hero. And Sabine is amazing. I didn't even like Sabine when I was first introduced to her in season 1. But now, this 2-part story arc has solidified her as one of my favorite characters in Rebels. She's amazing, and I love this story that she has. So basically, Sabine has the Darksaber, and she's a descendant of the Vizsla clan, and she wants to unite the Mandalorians. You know what I mean? And we are revealed some backstory to her in regards to why she left Mandalore and why she left her family behind and why she's considered a traitor. We're introduced to her mother and her father. Her mother wants to lock her up. Her father is an artist, so that's where she gets her artistic inspiration from. And Sabine designed a weapon for the Empire, to kill Mandalore. Actually, to kill the Mandalorians. This is more revealed a little bit later in season 4. So she's considered a traitor from her own kind. However, she in the end, she ends up winning over her family, and there's some great moments of training because she needs to be somewhat of a leader. She doesn't have to be the leader of Mandalore, but she has to be a leader in her own right. And I love the when Kanan is training her, and she's failing, and she's failing, and she's failing, and she's frustrated, and and she doesn't want to face, her destiny, and in the moment of training, she does. She comes out and she reveals to Ezra, she reveals to Kanan all the terrible things that have happened to her. And I don't know, it was just a real inspirational moment for me, and I really liked the way it was depicted, and I really liked the way that it was delivered. And there's a great little standoff between her and one of the clans that doesn't want her there and that considers her a traitor. In fact, they, despite Sabine's mother not even trusting her, the other clans betray her mother. So not only, Sabine's mom thought it was all good. She was like, okay, my daughter's a traitor, that's it. But then another clan that was aligned with the Empire said, you know what? To hell with you too. So, not only do they not like Sabine, they don't like her whole family. So they betray them as well. And in the end, there's a nice standoff, almost that reminds me like of an old Western between Sabine and this, this clan that's a clan leader that's aligned with the Empire. And she defeats him, but not in cold blood. She doesn't want to kill him because she wants to do the honorable thing, even though it's a little bit anti-Mandalorian because I believe they're more of a to the death kind of people. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to be the better person, But in the end, this person, this clan leader that's aligned with the Empire, couldn't admit defeat, and he tries to kill her behind her back, in which her mom saves her daughter's life by shooting this little bastard, So it was nice. It was a nice resolution to the conflict between mother and daughter. And again, I cannot praise this little 2-part story arc enough. It was outstanding, and, Sabine is now one of my favorite characters, a character that I didn't even really like at first. So now moving on, we have the episode Through Imperial Eyes. And it has a very great opening sequence. I really like the utilization of point of view shots. Something that, it's rarely seen in any of these animated features and animated shows in Star Wars. I always appreciate it when they get cinematic, in their delivery, in their shot sequencing and in compositing. It's great. Love the compositions. As we still come across... No, I'm sorry. Let me start it again. Ezra still comes across as a joke. He's still joking around. And basically, he's sent on board to extract Kallus because his last communication to Fulcrum was monitored by the Imperials. So it's kind of a setup. And they're on board. They're on ship. And they know who Fulcrum is. And basically, Ezra and Kallus, they want to sneak into Admiral Thrawn's database and erase the location of the rebel base. Again, Ezra's a little smartass here. He's my least favorite character. It's funny. The main character is my least favorite character out of the entire show. But again, Thrawn, he's too smart to fall for all this because the episode ends with what's the guy's name? Kallus. Yeah, Kallus, he almost gets caught, but he's able to place the blame on another soldier. Basically the other soldier thought that Governor Price was the traitor, and Kallus is able to spin this into making the soldier that's accusing Price to look like he's the traitor, to look like he's Fulcrum. But Thrawn's too smart for this, man. Thrawn knows. He knows already who the traitor is. And he just goes along with it. Yeah, good job, Kallus. Pats him on the back. But he knows everything that's going on. And he's just going to let Kallus think that he got away with it in order to weed out all the rebels and destroy them all. It's classic Thrawn. Now, moving on, we have the episode Secret Cargo, which involves or has a guest star appearance from Mon Mothma. And this episode wasn't spectacular and it wasn't bad. I appreciated it because I like seeing those legacy characters like Mon Mothma. And in this episode, it's basically the Ghost Crew and other rebels. Basically kind of rogue squadron members kind of being untrustworthy towards each other. But in the end, they're able to coalesce and come together and work together to fight against the Empire. And it was a nice little decent filler episode. Nothing too spectacular. And again, it's always great to see Mon Mothma. And it's always great to see some nice, spectacular space battles. I really like the... I really like the space battles in this episode. They're very exciting. And again, it's an all-around decent filler episode, nothing too spectacular. And then the next episode, Double Agent Droid, a bunch of silly nonsense, entirely skippable. There's always one or two or three of these kind of episodes in these Star Wars shows, and this is one of them. It's filler episode. Nothing important happens. Just a bunch of nonsense. Now, let's talk about Twin Suns. Now, Darth Maul is one of my favorite characters, man. So when I heard that Darth Maul may possibly be killed in this episode, I was excited. You know what I mean? I was excited. Just because I love a character doesn't mean, that I'm not open to seeing him come to an end. However, I am not a fan of this episode, man. I think the way Darth Maul went out was a disgrace. Excuse my language, but it was a fucking disgrace. And let me get to it. I hear all the arguments for why this episode was brilliant because, it was a tribute to the old samurai films, etc., etc., etc. Now, my problem is this. Okay, if you're going to bring Darth Maul back, who got killed, in the Duel of Fates, if you're going to bring him back and he's going to die like this, I mean, what's even the point? I mean, if you look back at his whole story, post Phantom Menace up till now, I mean, Darth Maul is just a legacy of failure, man. He's just a failure. He failed at everything. He came back to fail. I mean, the guy literally has no dick, first of all. And then everything he tries to do, he fails. He tries to be a crime lord, he fails. He tries to rule Mandalore, he fails. He tries to get revenge on Obi-Wan, he fails. And I really didn't like it. I really didn't like the way he went out. I felt like it would have been better if, let's say, Darth Maul, because things were getting interesting in Rebels Season 2 when Darth Maul, was no longer a Sith. And when he had animosity towards the Sith, things were getting interesting for me. It was like, oh, maybe he'll turn around and become an anti-hero. And when he does go out and when he does die, he'll go out, swinging against the people not the people, but against the Sith, against the ones that took him from his mother, against the ones that tortured him, against the ones that abandoned him. That was interesting. But to bring it all the way back to Obi-Wan and dying in the way that he did was some bitch-made shit. It was awful. I mean, and not only that, 90% of that episode is just Ezra wandering around in the desert. And then like the last 3-4 minutes is Darth Maul confronting Obi-Wan. Now, maybe if you dedicated more time of that episode to to fleshing out this little fight, I would have appreciated it more. You know what I mean? But it felt like it was just shoehorned in there, and it was just a total disappointment, man. And everybody saying, oh, but that's how, that's really how sword fighting is. It's not all flashy and over the top like the prequel fights. And it's like, dude, I don't want to hear that. Like that's fine, but don't start getting realistic on me now. This is Star Wars. That would have been fine if every single movie that had been out now and every single fight that we've seen in the Clone Wars and Rebels had been depicted realistically. Then that would have been fine. Like, you know what I mean? But all of a sudden we have to be like, oh, this is high value art, and it's a tribute to samurai cinema, like Akira Kurosawa, and that's exactly how a fight would have been depicted. And if you don't appreciate it, oh, you're beneath me. It's like, nah, man. Like, no, like that was a disgrace, man. Again, if you're going to bring Darth Maul back, why are you even going to do that if you're going to send them off like this? It almost makes me wish that he had stayed dead. So now when I watch Clone Wars, he was so badass in, knowing his fate at the end of all this shit is disappointing and it's depressing. Knowing that he just came back basically just to go out worse than he did, in Duel of Fates. At least in Duel of Fates, he was kicking ass. You know what I'm saying? He took out Obi-Wan's master, and Obi-Wan got the upper hand, at the last minute and took him out. But this is just some tired old fool that just like, I'm dead. Oh man, thumbs down. Thumbs down. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me. But like I said, I'm not trying to hear this artsy-fartsy samurai cinema argument, man. My main thing is this. If you're going to bring the character back, why do it if you're going to send them off like that? I would have loved to see Darth Maul almost become like an anti-hero against the Empire. I would have loved to see Darth Maul die doing some kind of like kamikaze run against the Emperor. Like he takes out the Emperor, one of the Emperor's like most valuable assets or something, But instead this whole time he's still obsessed over revenge for Obi-Wan. Like, dude, I thought he already got his thirst for revenge quenched when he killed Obi-Wan's girl. What's her name? The Mandalorian queen, man. I thought that was it. But no, he's still obsessed with getting Obi-Wan. I mean, like, that's all he's about. I mean, it's kind of pathetic. This episode makes me feel like Darth Maul is pathetic. And it kind of makes me like Darth Maul a little less. unfortunately. So that's not saying too much about this episode. All right. And I know people are going to disagree with me, but I got to be honest. So now moving on, the final story arc, 0 Hour. This was a spectacular episode. It was amazing. Outstanding space battles. Outstanding depictions of Thrawn. There was a lot of genuine desperation and emotion in the final episode here. It was very intense, and I love this. I love the scenes when the Bendu basically gets very upset because the rebels have brought the Empire to his home, and he basically becomes a huge giant storm cloud and begins just not only attacking the Empire, he's just attacking everything in his path. And this kind of also it kind of illustrates the ambiguity of one that's dark and light, one that's in the middle, and again, the space battles in this episode are amazing. It was highly emotional. Kallus is finally confronted by Thrawn as the Fulcrum traitor, and Kallus is able to escape with the Ghost Crew. And again, this episode, this 2-story arc episode, was a great season finale to the show. I didn't think they'd be able to do it, especially after the Darth Maul nonsense of the previous episode. It was like, after I saw that episode, I was like, I don't know how they're going to make this finale interesting, because one of the main reasons why I was watching this show, they totally fucked that up, by having him go out like a little bitch, but they were actually able to make me care about the remaining characters, because it seems like all the reasons why I was watching this show, they've come to pass. I didn't like season 1 because I didn't really like the initial introduction of these new characters. I love season 2 because season 2 had Vader, season 2 had Ahsoka, season 2 had the clones, but that's kind of come and gone. Season 3 I was watching for Darth Maul and Thrawn as well, and now Darth Maul's gone. And now they end the season 3 with the Ghost Crew, and and I sit there and I watch the end of the season, and I'm like, you know what? I care about the Ghost Crew. They've done a good job. They've succeeded. They've succeeded in making me care about new characters. Something that's not easy to do. Something that the sequel trilogy is failing at spectacularly at. So all in all, season 3 of Rebels is very good. I give it a B+. Still not my favorite season. I thought season 2 was outstanding. I gave that one an A. But season 3 is great. It's not as good as season 2, but it's still worth checking out, despite the terrible letdown of Darth Maul's death. Nevertheless, there's a lot of good here. I loved it. And I'm going to get to season 4 and give you a review on that too. Thanks for listening, man.